everybody, welcome back to part 2 of my segment on how to get the most out of your Superior drummer sounds and how I like to get this to sound the way I want for my mixes. This is going to be more focused on the processing, finishing up what I do in the actual Superior software, and then moving into the DAW to do my personal processing there to get these tones to really come to life for me. If you guys want to see how I got up to this point, or if you feel lost, go to part 1. That's where I discuss everything up to this point. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So here's what we have so far after part 1. Cool, so let's continue on. First thing is doing compression on the toms here. The thing I find with this compressor is that it can be very aggressive very quickly. And for some things I really don't prefer it, but I do like the character that it gets. For the toms specifically, the kick and snare, I fiddled around with it and you can get decent results, but I much prefer a third-party compressor that I have to get a little bit different of a character. Just enhance that attack and lengthen the decay a little bit there. So I'm also gonna do a little bit of EQ on the snare. This gets it shaped a little more the way I like it. Last thing I'm going to do is mess with this separate overhead mic that I mentioned in the first part. Again, that is the ambience of the second snare drum that I layered. And what I use this for as a separate track is to really just destroy it. So by itself it sounds really gross, but I want to really enhance the tone of the snare drum overall by just making it a little more aggressive. So I'm going to leave that for now. There's a separate step I do in the actual DAW where I send it to some distortion. But that's basically all I do in the Superior mixer itself. And I'm going to move on to the actual multi-track here. And you can already hear what the snare trash, as I call it, is contributing to the overall sound. So I'm just going to move left to right with these tracks here and do the more serious processing that I like to do. So this is the compressor I like to use specifically for the kick and snare to get a very specific aggressive tone that I like to hear just from those two elements in particular. And I feel that this metric halo compressor can really achieve that for me. Whatever compressor you have on hand, if you apply similar numbers as a starting point and the same amount of gain reduction as well, you will get a similar sound, but bear in mind that compressors contain different colors and characters that are added, and it really boils down to what you prefer to hear, and this is what I prefer. So Alright, so moving on to the EQ. pull back the kick out just a little. General idea, boosting the fundamental, or what I hear to be the fundamental. Getting rid of the really sub stuff, just because I want the kick to be a little bit tighter and not worry about extra resonance and all that super sub stuff to get rid of clarity. I made a little dip here because there's this sort of like quacky sound that comes out of this particular kick drum. I like the attack to come a little bit more from the higher end of the spectrum. So moving on to the snare drum, I'm just going to drag this same compressor, and then just mess around with some things. Enhances that attack a lot. You can hear it in the low end especially. I'm gonna do a little EQ stuff as well. So I'm just finding the places that I feel like it can really pop out in the mix and just add a lot of power to the snare drum. This is where the body seems to come from. And then I've noticed in this case there is a very low ring that's very close to the actual fundamental. I like to get rid of that a little bit just so I'm not just bringing up a ton of ring along with that. Moving on. Just giving it the old drummer's perspective. And I'm gonna go ahead and move past the toms just because I did the basic moves I want to do already in the Superior mixer. And when I start doing like the final touch-ups and stuff, I'm sure I'll visit it, maybe do some EQ or just fade or balance. So moving on to the ambient stuff. I waited to do any processing until now just because since these aspects of the kit contribute so much detail to the overall sound, I figured I would use an EQ that I trust a lot more and sounds a lot cleaner to my ears. But again, use these numbers as a starting point with any EQ or even the Superior EQ and you will get the result that you're after. I've always been a fan of just letting the close mics contribute the real impact in the low end and just simply just rolling it off and cleaning it up in the other mics. Cymbals tend to have this interesting thing from 500 to 1K where there's just some sort of like puffy buildup, even with real drums too. So I just like to tame that a little bit in the ambient mics to be specific. So that's going to be it for part 2. Part 3, I'm going to get into the parallel processing I like to do and see if we can make it to the final touch-ups, and then at the end of it all, place it in a mix and see how it sounds. So thanks for watching everyone, and if you have any questions, please let me know.